recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you. Mr. Director, when we abandoned Afghanistan, we released about 5,000 terrorists from the Parowan detention facility. One of those terrorists showed up at Abbey Gate 10 days later and killed 13 U.S. Marines. Where are the other 5,000?
I don't know that I can tell you where all 5,000
Well,
of them
let
are.
me put it more simply. Have you encountered any here in the United States?
We have quite a few ongoing investigations into foreign terrorist-related subjects, whether they're Al-Qaeda related or ISIS related, that we're conducting as you and I are having this conversation, and certainly.
So have you encountered any from Parowan here in the United States?
Specifically, I'm not sure I can say that. Let me follow up and make sure if there's anything more I can provide you on that.
Well, meanwhile, we've had about 1.5 million known gotaways cross the border as this crisis has unfolded. Any estimate of how many among of those 5,000 among the 1.5 million known gotaways may be terrorists?
I know that we have seen an uptick, which is obviously concerning to me, and I can tell from your question, concerning to you, in KSTs, as we call them, known or suspected terrorists coming across the southwest border. And our folks are working very hard to try to do our part to try to keep tabs on those individuals.
Speaking of upticks, have we seen an uptick in criminal cartel or cartel-related gang activity in the United States over the last several years?
Yes, the cartels working in kind of an unholy alliance with dangerous violent gangs here in the U.S. are responsible not just for the abominable distribution of fentanyl all over the country, but also an awful lot of the violence that comes along with it.
And that's coming principally across our southern border?
That's a huge driver of it, certainly.
Huge driver. It's reported we've lost contact with the guardians of more than 85,000 unaccompanied minors who've been brought here by the cartels through the southern border. How many of these children are still unaccounted for?
That I'm not sure. We have the answer to that. That may be a question for DHS.
What's the Woods procedure?
The Woods procedure is a procedure has nothing to do with 702. It has to do with traditional FISA, Title I FISA as we call it, and involves having files that have all the underlying documents to support each of the factual assertions in the application.
Is that important to the integrity of FISA applications?
Yes, sir.
In February of 2020, you assured the committee that you took these FISA abuses seriously, that you were working to address them. A year and a half later, the Office of the Inspector General reported that you weren't. They reported systemic noncompliance and essentially that some FBI field personnel took the Woods procedure as a joke. If we can't trust your past reforms, how seriously should we take your promises of future reform?
I appreciate the opportunity to address this one. So that OIG finding actually applies to, number one, that applies to compliance problems that occurred before all the fixes that I was testifying to you all about. Even though the report came out later, it was covering a time period that predated all of the fixes and reforms we put in place.
Your general counsel assured Mr. Durham that the abuses would not have happened because of the new procedures for supervisorial review, yet some of the worst abuses in Crossfire Hurricane were committed by supervisory agents. So why should we have any great confidence that's not going to happen again?
There are a couple different sets of reforms here. So the first is on the reforms that we put in place in response to the Inspector General's Crossfire Hurricane report.
But we can't trust your supervisors is the problem. The problem seems to be that this power exists at all, and human beings, being what they are, will tend to abuse them. Could you describe the term parallel construction as it relates to evidence produced in FISA searches?
Parallel construction? I'm not sure I've used that
Doesn't
term
that refer
before.
to the FBI using forbidden information from a 702 search to alert local law enforcement to search for and then produce the same material without revealing that it came from an improper search?
I'm just not sure about the use of the term.
Well, has the FBI ever employed that particular tactic in prosecuting American citizens?
Not to my knowledge. But again, I can look into that and get back to you.
What percentage of FISA warrant applications are rejected by the FISA court?
I don't know that we have that number. There's usually a back and forth with the court. And it's not unusual for the court to,
It's a fraction of percentage, isn't it?
a fraction of a percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's right, but it's definitely a small number. And I think
Which-
that's
which-
partly
which makes-
because our
which-
folks learn over time what the
Which
court
makes that sound
expects.
an awful lot like a rubber stamp. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Director Wray. Thank you for coming